how would you describe the strategy that you're following?
So I think let's go back to this issue of how do we get scale and speed.
Yep.
Now, one option that was there for us was to create our, look at the issue. We had to collect, because we wanted the uniqueness of every number, the only way we could do that was using biometrics, by using fingerprints and the iris.
Okay.
So we collect all the 10 fingerprints, both the iris and a picture. What that meant was that every man, woman and child in the country at some point has to come to a location and give this information.
Yeah.
So that's a massive logistical challenge to get 1.2 billion people to come. And we realized that if we start building an infrastructure for doing this, we would end up creating a huge organization with huge costs, huge number of employees. And that's when we came out with a partnership model. And we're creating an ecosystem where we don't do that, what we call as enrollment, but we do that through partners.
Yes.
And we have 65 partners today.
Oh.
Partners like state governments, banks, insurance companies, oil companies, and so forth. And the idea was that all these agencies are already dealing with the people.
Yeah.
And if we can somehow insert our enrollment process and embed it in their workflow, then we can get enrollments out of that. And that was actually the sort of critical thing. But we provide the technology, we provide the software and the platform.
Okay.
So whether you're enrolling a person in a village in Bihar or a bank in Bombay, the software used for enrollment is the same, even though the agencies may be different.
Yes.
And that's how, even though we're using all these diverse agencies, we're able to standardize on the way the enrollment happened. So this is a very different way of looking at the problem of leveraging existing infrastructure networks. And that's how we are basically driving this. And this is a highly scalable model because we can keep adding enrollment agencies and enrollment points. So today we have about 7,000 points already where enrollment is going on.
Oh, wow.
And they all use the same technology. They all use the same trained operators. So it's all the same quality data coming from all those locations.
And what kind of incentive did you have to provide the partners to do this? Or?
Yeah, well, there are two incentives. One is that the partners also benefit from these IDs because let's say a state government is in the business of providing subsidized food and fuel to the poor. They needed this database to make sure that it reached the right person and that there was no diversion of that commodity. It went to the genuine beneficiary. So they value this database because it allows them to make their basic database of beneficiaries much more spruced up. So that's the win-win that we're able to create. So if you partner with us, we'll help that process. In addition to that, we pay our registrars $1 per person for enrollment. So that there's an economic thing also there.
But boy, that's pretty cheap. I mean, that's a good deal though. I mean, I would think that the cost per person to enroll, set up an enrollment, like I was thinking as you were early on saying, you got to get them enrolled. I wonder what the cost per unit
actually
is for
it
that.
Costs about $1, about 50 rupees is what we pay our registrars, and the back end costs us another 50 to 75 rupees. So actually for our cost per person is about $2.5 to less than $3.
Wow.
Total cost. And also that
is very low.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
You should tell that to my colleagues.
Yes, no, that's right. Well, again, your problem is you have to multiply it by such a big number, right?
Yeah,
seems
1.2 billion.
Yeah,
people,
1.2 billion people. I can do that calculation.
And the other important thing, again, it comes back to the model, is our registrars, our partners, they in turn give this business to enrolling agencies, which are companies that specialize in doing that. And those enrolling agencies invest in the equipment. And the registrars pay them only on actual enrollments. So it's a completely variable cost model. So we only pay when people are successfully enrolled. So that was another different way of doing it. It wasn't buying a lot of hardware. It was creating an operating model.
Yeah, and it creates, and at least the other thing that seems very attractive to me is it creates very little infrastructure that you don't need, that you're going to have to keep paying for later. It sort of is it's almost kind of decomposing once you've got everybody enrolled.
Enrolling agency buys the equipment, and if they do X thousand enrollments, they recover the cost of the hardware. So we don't have to have the burden of having a lot of infrastructure. So it's a light model. Again, it's a model learned from the the technology world.
And it's great. I mean, I love these sort of living advertisements of the opposable mind, right? It is a great example. Do you want speed or scale? And you know what I wrote in the book, and partially from interviewing folks like Nandan, is the reaction is no, I don't want to make that choice. I want to figure out something different. And what it takes is a brand new model, which you've duly created, and that's what makes the difference.
Sure.
But that instinct, I mean, I just think it's such an important instinct to just say, it's never been done before. Everybody tells me I have to make this trade-off. I'm just not going to do it. Where do you think that came from in you? Why?
Well, you know, the thing was that I took up the job because I wanted to get it done.
Yep.
Right? So we thought long and hard, and all of us said, how do we do all these things at the same time? How do we get, you know, scale and scale and speed? And one of the commitments we have made publicly is within the next 3 years we'll enroll 600 million people into the system. Oh. That's a public goal. It's, you know, it's everybody knows this goal. It's on our website. So that's a huge goal to achieve. Now, to get to that kind of numbers, we have to reach at least 100 million people, a million people a day. Have to come, you know, somewhere in the country. So somebody has to, a million people have to walk into something somewhere and do this and all that stuff. So that was the thing. And I think the only way we could do it was what? Finally, there was only one way to do it, which was the solution that we came out with. And we also had said that we launch within 18 months. We launched in 14 months. Again, goes back to the fact that, you know, speed is of the essence in something like this, that you can't, you know, linger on for months and years. You need to get on with the job. And already we have enrolled about 7.5 million people, and our current enrollment rate is at about 200,000 a day.
Yeah.
And we expect to get 1 million a day by October. So, and it's essentially, by adding enrollment stations, it's scalable in the front end. By adding servers, it's scalable at the back end. So it's scalable both front end and back end. So it boils down to how well you architect and design the solution, and how you leverage, you know, everybody in the ecosystem.
But I still want to know why. What can you go back and think about? Most of these things never happen, right? You don't have Indians uniquely identified, or it takes 2 decades because most of the time the people in charge say, well, it can't be done. It can't be done any faster than that. It'll take 20 years to do that, or we can't do it in a high quality way, or it'll take $50 billion and we don't actually have $50 billion to spend. What got you to the place where we were game to walk in, put an audacious goal out there, 600 million, we're going to get it for 250 an enrollment? I mean, I'm not sort of saying, you know, tell me it's because you're wonderful, which you are, but I'm more interested in how did you get to the point where that's the way you looked at choices that you seem to be given? Because I think that's what people might find very, very valuable. How did you get there?
No, I think this goes back to, again, I think how you do the visioning and strategizing, right? I think if you start with the goal, then and work backwards from the goal, then you're forced to come out with a solution that gets to the goal. Now, you know, it is very clear that we had to get a substantial number done within 5 years, and 600 million was, you know, as good a number as any.
Yeah.
Now, then, when you say, how do you do 600 million, and they say, if you want to do, and if you assume it takes you a couple of years to build this stuff, then it has to be at the rate of 1 million plus a day.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you won't get to 600 million because, let's say, 200 million a year for 3 years. And then if you want to get 1 million a day, and if an enrollment station can do 25 a day, that means we need 40,000 enrollment stations.
Yeah.
And then you say, if I'm going to run an organization with 40,000 enrollment stations, I'll have to create this gigantic bureaucracy.
Yeah.
And then you realize, no, maybe that's not the way to do it. Is there a way to do this in partnership? so that you can leverage other people's presence out there and take advantage. So that becomes the next conclusion.
Yeah.
Then the question comes, if you're going to use other networks to enroll, how do you ensure they all do it in the same way?
Yeah.
So then the logical conclusion from that is you provide them the software.
Yeah.
So you
just work back.
You just work backwards from the goal, and finally the answer comes out of that. So you work backward from a goal, and that drives the answer.
So what other things could you do in India working backwards from a goal when you're done with when you're done with this?
Oh, that's a different question. Yeah.
Not a good question.
No, I'm saying that's but let me tell you something else.
Yeah.
The other thing is that the point of this is certainly to give the ID.
Yep.
Certainly to make sure that people who are poor and marginalized, who don't have IDs, become part of the system.
Yep.
But it's also about creating an innovation ecosystem on top of this.
Yes.
And that's, I think, the other big thing which we're trying to do, which is that after we give people this ID will be available as an online ID, which means I can authenticate a person's ID online.
Yeah.
And that we make that available as an open API, as an application programming interface, which any application can embed on their application. So suppose you have a banking application and you want to verify the ID, you can verify with us. Or suppose it's a Facebook application. They want a verified ID, they can verify with us. So this whole idea is to create an open infrastructure where people can now build applications which require ID verification. And that is really the long-term goal of this. The short-term goal is to get everybody in. But as you provide these kind of online IDs, you can use that to re-engineer public services, banking, telecom. And that we see as a real game changer in all this.
And it seems to me you'll end up leapfrogging a lot of countries that are notionally, supposedly more developed.